In this episode, we are going to tell you what we think the top 5 TESOL methods are that you need to know. However, here's the thing, neither of us actually know what each other have chosen. So we're going to reveal them one by one, starting with 5 and then ending with our top choice, number 1. Okay, let's get started. Ida, are you ready?
Right, should we do a drum roll?
Yeah, do a drum roll. Okay, let's reveal number 5. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Oh,
That's quite interesting. I never
interesting.
thought it.
Yeah. So I've
A
chosen grammar
GTM?
translation, but grammar translation with an asterisk next to it. Okay. And
Okay.
my reasons
You go
are
ahead and
that,
tell us why.
yeah,
Why
so
you
my
chose
reasons
that.
are that I think that we can't get away from grammar translation. I think it's been around for a long time, and there's a reason for that. I think that when we go and use apps like Duolingo or something like that, there's tons of grammar translation on it. So actually, we need to be really aware of grammar translation. Yeah. However, obviously, grammar translation has a ton of limits on it, but it does do things which I like, such as there's first language use, which I think is really important. I really like grammar, like if I'm learning, I like grammar to be explained to me in the first language. I find it really, really helpful.
Mhm.
So there's there's a lot of problems with it, but we never get away from it. It's always there. If you just need to, sometimes you just need to translate something, and that's really, really useful in the classroom. However, I
Yeah.
do think that we have to augment it and take some of it and try to change it. So that's my reasoning for that. Rather odd choice. I was a little bit surprised I actually chose that as number 5, to be honest.
I was really surprised. I really didn't expect to see that, but I agree with you. I think while we have obviously, moved away from pure focus on form to a lot of focus on meaning,
Mhm.
I think in that journey, as ELT TESOL practitioners, we realize that we still need form, right? And it is important. And like you said, time and time again, I've come across learners, and including myself, I must say, learn in another language, who really would like to know the logic behind,
Exactly.
a sentence structure. They want, and that helps them. Like, so that's perhaps how they learn better, to really know the formula, the logic, the why is this, a sentence is structured this way. So I think, yeah, we all have realized through this journey that form is important in the right time, with the right focus.
Yeah.
It's very important. We
Yeah.
can't skip that. So I
Yeah,
totally
but
agree. Yeah.
what I think we need to get away from, and you just kind of reminded me of it this there with the sentence, is the ridiculous sentences which are just so silly. And again, when you go into language learning apps, you still get them. Like, I don't know, like my cat post a letter to my fish or something, and it's just like, what
Yes.
the hell? That's just not useful. So
Yes.
that stuff needs to go for sure.
Yes. Yeah. That's, I think, when, yeah, but perhaps form is considered without thinking about function,
Yeah, absolutely.
and your situation. Yeah.
Okay.
Fair,
All right.
fair enough.
Okay. Tell us about
Yeah.
your choice. I'm really surprised by your choice. Like, why did you choose to
Okay. So first of all, for me, as a language educator, learning is social, meaningful, and rooted in communication,
Hmm.
not just form, although form is very important. So you will see that in my choices, that is reflected.
Hmm.
I think there is a thread running through my choices, in which you can see people first, and then language through use.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So now with my fifth option, I went for direct method because, first of all, like, obviously, considering the importance of communication in my choices, we can argue that the direct method was an early communicative approach, where only a
Hmm.
target language was used, and the focus was mostly on speaking and listening, in a realistic context. So it was a relatively considerable shift. So I know this is quite old, but it really, I think, it's important because it's one of the first approaches to prioritizing communication over translation and rules, and
Yeah.
it really paved the way for upcoming future approaches, methods, and approaches that focus on communication. So yeah, it represents a shift, I think, towards language as lived experience. And like I said, for me, that sense of, the social aspect of using language has always been very important. And it connects to everything, like I said, that came after,
Yeah.
including, for example, TBLT.
Mm.
So yeah, that's why it was my choice.
Okay. Okay. Great. Well, we move on to number 4 then.
Number
Are
4.
you
Okay,
ready?
here we go. Do you
Okay.
want to do it? Countdown?
3,
One.
2, 1. Oh, okay. That's actually quite similar.
Yep.
Okay. I think that I'll or you start this time. Why did you choose TBLT?
So, I was actually thinking a lot about this, and I said, should TBLT be at the top of my list? It's trendy. Everybody talks about TBLT.
Mhm.
I think it hasn't lost its spark in the field.
Mm.
But then I thought, yes, but still, I think there are other methods that, I would prioritize for the reasons I would say. But TBLT, obviously, learners use language to complete meaningful tasks,
Yeah.
solving
Yeah.
problem, planning, and the focus is on communication rather than form. While form will be dealt with. So I think that's one good about TBLT. I chose it because it sits right at the intersection of my interests that I just mentioned at the beginning,
Yeah.
the social side, communication, and the focus on the actual learners, the people who are involved, humans. So it focuses on communication and purpose and how language is actually used in real life. From a psychological perspective, it also supports learning through doing. And obviously, psychological side has always kind of, attracted me when it comes to language learning. And it looks at engaging cognitively and not just memorizing forms. So
Yeah.
yeah, TBLT had to be my list.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's pretty much the same reasoning for me, but I've chosen CLT, so it's a bit broader, but thinking about
Yeah.
communicative competence and how
Mm.
communicative competence is like the most important thing really for us, and using language to complete meaningful tasks. So it's interesting that you also brought up meaningfulness, because that's one of the things I wrote down on my
Yes.
notes, that's why
Yeah.
I really like CLT. And also, you know, with CLT, it's about getting students to communicate and giving them the opportunity to communicate, not like teaching them how to communicate per se. It's like, let's create
Yeah.
these opportunities for communication, and learning can happen in that. It's quite dynamic, which I like. And that idea of like throwing things around, you make mistakes, that's okay. We've probably both made mistakes in inverted commas today when we're speaking,
Yeah.
because no one speaks perfectly. It doesn't exist. So I love that kind of ethos of CLT. So
Yeah.
that's why I put it as my
Great.
number 4. So I think we're kind of similar in that one.
Yeah, kind of similar, I would say. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Are you ready? Number
Right.
3. Okay.
Oh
Three.
dear me. Okay.
Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay.
One,
3, 2,
three,
1.
2, 1.
Oh.
Ah, oh, interesting. Oh, I'd love to know why you chose that.
Self-directed
Okay.
language learning.
Yeah, cooperative language learning for me. Okay. Tell us about your choice. What made you choose that as your third
Well,
option?
I absolutely love this method because, and I'm just looking at my notes to remind me. But I love in this method how it's really about trying to create really bulletproof language learners who can go and use language in the real world. And that is so important. And it moves us away from this exam driven, you know, teaching to the test thing, about like, well, actually, what do really good language learners look like? They're language learners that can tolerate uncertainty. They're language learners that can take risks. They're language learners that can focus on meaning. And these are really durable qualities of a language learner, which I think can come out of this method. I also think if you're teaching this method, it's a really great opportunity to be able to reflect on your own teaching, because you
Mm.
have to give over control or facilitate the class in a
Yes.
way which then allows you to think about yourself as a teacher. Whereas if you're really controlling and you're at the front of the class being the source of knowledge, you can never have that opportunity because you don't have time, because you're just,
Yeah.
it's so all encompassing and very exhausting being that kind of teacher.
Yeah.
So therefore, I think self-directed language learning is really important. I think it can help us to create learners that can leave the classroom and keep learning and be very successful. So I'm all about that
Yeah.
kind of sense of empowerment that it can give.
Yeah. 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 I can see how in your choice, um, the human side is focused on. So the learners and the teachers, and really shifting the focus from the language itself to the users of it,
Yeah,
whether it's the learners or or the teachers. So yeah, I can see that it kind of resonates a lot with how I really looked at my choices and what is key in the
yeah,
method that I chose. So like with cooperative language learning, there's a lot of that. Learners work together in structured groups. They often work towards a shared goal,
yeah,
and they support each other. And there's a lot of interaction in that supporting.
yeah,
So the focus really here is on the learners, on the actual users of the language. And it obviously aligns both with, learning psychology that I mentioned that I'm interested in, and communication. So it recognizes that learning is something social that we do. And, interaction with others can help deepen understanding.
yeah,
So, and of
100%.
course, just like you said, yeah, it kind of mirrors real life communication, like real world communication. We rarely work alone. We're social animals now, whether it is outside a classroom or inside a classroom. And I think that's important for a method to acknowledge that and try to
Absolutely.
implement it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we negotiate, we clarify ideas, and we co-construct knowledge, which
it's
is
part of just
so
our
important.
existence. It's how we exist as
Yeah,
social
yeah,
beings.
yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
you're going to be
So,
excited then to hear about my number two. Do you have your number two ready?
well, yes, I have it ready.
Okay. Three, two, one. Can you see it?
There you go.
Cooperative language learning.
Yeah,
So, like everything that you just
CLIL.
said, I totally agree with, and I put that as because yeah,
Okay.
everything that you said about it, I totally agree with. I love as well how it's about using English as a shared resource to
Boy.
cooperate, to get something done, to communicate, to share
Yeah.
meaning. Um, the other thing I would add is that I think that this method is also potentially useful for advanced learners, and it'd be quite difficult to
Mm.
teach advanced learners because like what do you teach them, what do you do with them? But
Yeah.
this kind of cooperative approach is really, really useful. It allows them to take materials with them, it allows them to take the lead a lot, and then takes the pressure off
Yeah.
you as the teacher, rather than being like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, I need to be this high-end source of perfect knowledge for these people who are really advanced and maybe know the grammar better than I do. So I think it's a useful.
Yes. 100%. That's a very, very good point actually you made. Because like here, as students become more and more advanced, the focus really shifts from the language to how they use it.
Yeah,
And such methods will allow for such space to be
yeah,
explored. So, okay, let's focus more on zooming on the learner and the learners
yes.
and then see what they can really do. So, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. It's a very good
And I
point.
think that something like TBLT can be brought into this approach or into this method as well, can't
Yeah.
it? Like having a real task to do can be really good for these kinds of learners. But I think for me it becomes part of a cooperation, and actually the cooperation is a big part. The thing I wanted to say about my two and my three, so cooperative language learning and self-directed language learning, is that I think that you need to really set them up from the very beginning of the course. You know, don't
Right.
think that I think it can be quite difficult to like introduce them part way, you know. So that's
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
thing I think about them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, tell
Yeah.
us about
Yeah. Yeah.
CLIL. Why is CLIL your number two
Yes.
choice?
Yes. Oh, it had to be my number. I mean, it had to be one of my choices, and it had to be quite at the top. Look, obviously, CLIL is teaching, subject content through the target language. So there's a lot of focus on meaning in, real life context. So learners develop both content knowledge and language skills at the same time. Now, it really connects strongly to my interest again in communication as meaning making,
Yeah.
not just language practice. So
Yeah.
the meaning,
Yeah.
and obviously, it reflects real academic context, which is what we are mostly working in. So students use language to engage with knowledge and not just obviously display accuracy. I feel like this is what we do. It's our day-to-day job. It's been for years, and we have students who use English as a second language who come here to study, and through that, journey of learning a subject, their English hopefully improves as well.
Yeah.
And it's just so wonderful to see that happening. So yeah, I think it had a lot of buzzwords that are linked to my interest when it comes to language learning and language education in general, like communication, meaning making. So yeah, it had to be at the top of my list.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Oh,
In that
right.
case, then, will we go to our number one?
That
Yep.
is bringing us to our number one choice, right?
Okay. Three, two, one.
Ah, do you know what? Actually, I was gonna choose that. I'm swearing I was gonna choose that. Okay, I'm glad you have it in the list. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
you go first.
Yeah, okay. I think for me, post method is the most important one because I think that it's about principled decision making. I think it's moving away from Western dominated methods. I think that you're teaching to
Yes.
a context. And when I speak to my students, I'm always saying to them about context. What's the context that you're planning this for? Who are the learners? What do they need? You know, and I think that applying this approach is a great way to really try to meet the needs of the learners that you have right in front of you. And we never stick to a method properly anyway. I think, well, I don't like, I'm quite organic the way that I teach. So
Yeah.
quite often, like I end up like just adding
Yes.
something or doing something or just fiddling with the method a little bit. So I think that this is a really good approach to just kind
Yes.
of to be honest about our practice. Um,
Yes.
Also, what I really like about post methods is that with post method is that you can, as the teacher, can also be a theorist of your own practice. You don't have to kind of like wait
Oh,
for something to come from the ivory tower, like a theorist to tell you how to teach. You can really think about your
yes.
own teaching, and I love
Yeah.
that as a method. What do you think?
100%. Absolutely. And kind of that resonates a lot with the current trend in the field of localization, contextualization, and how important it is to really for our teachers, language teachers, to kind of understand all these different types of methods and approaches, but at the end of the day, be the main decision maker in what suits their context best.
Exactly.
And that's why it's important to know all these methods and approaches, and then also be equipped with skills to be able to select, um, choose, merge, so that what at the end of the day we practice in our classroom is
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
for our students. So yeah, yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah,
think I
no, I
think it's I'm
absolutely,
so
I
glad that
absolutely agree with
yeah.
that, and I think as well, like you can't just go straight to post method. It's not possible. You need to actually really have gone through and understood
Yes.
the other
Yeah.
methods to think
Yeah.
about, which aspects of which ones you can apply. I do think that the kind of the
Yeah.
principles of post method and also the principles of like cooperative language learning and maybe even self-directed language learning can be applied to other fields. So when I'm
Yeah.
running a seminar, for example, I'm not teaching language, but I do often apply like cooperative language learning approaches to that. as well. And also, I think very much about the context, who I've got in front of me, and the ethos of Postmethod. So I think there's lots of teaching that we can take particular these kind of two methods and apply them to different learning situations. I think they're really successful.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
How about
Obviously,
you?
like, 'cause I'm so glad that you had the post method, because that I was just like indecisive. I was like, should I put that in? And I was like, do you know, I think Mickey's gonna put it at this list, so we definitely will have a chance to talk about it. So I went for community language learning as my top, the top one, number one. It's a humanistic approach, right?
Here.
And I'm so attracted to that, I must say. So that's, that's where learners work together in kind of some sort of supportive community.
Mm.
Uh, Oftentimes using their first language initially, which we now know is okay, translanguaging, code
Yeah.
switching. If it helps learning, why not? Why not using
Why
your
not?
linguistic
Yeah.
repertoire to assist, your learning? And then the fact that the teacher kind of acts as the counselor rather than a director, really, I find it really fascinating. That kind of supportive role that the teacher has is very important. While that community is also, the focus of the method.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm interested in psychology of learning, as I've said. So I think CLL recognizes that learning a language can feel vulnerable, particularly with adult learners. If you think about your immigrants, for example,
Yeah.
it's a very vulnerable experience. There's a lot of identity, for example, involved
Yeah.
in that. So I think CLL allows for that to be acknowledged. So I kind of prioritizes trust, safety, and emotional support.
Oof.
I think aspects of learning that are very important, that kind of
Very, very
emotional
important.
engagement. I'm so lucky to research that at the moment of, the connection between emotional engagement and cognitive engagement, and how ultimately these different aspects of engagement, result in learning.
Yeah.
And the more I research this area, the more I see there's solid evidence that they are so intertwined and they are so interconnected. So I think I really appreciate the fact that this method really, sheds light on this aspect of learning, which is very important. So
Yeah.
I think it's, yeah,
I agree with
I kind of,
I totally agree with all of that. And it reminds me when I did my PhD, I talked a bit about trust and safety and these things because I thought these are so important to being a teacher in any context.
yeah,
However, I kind of found it quite difficult to investigate because how do you investigate things like trust? It's like a invisible social glue, isn't it? But
yeah,
if our relationships with our learners are going to be successful, there needs to be trust there. They need to trust you,
100%.
with your knowledge. You need to trust you with their emotions.
Yeah,
There needs to be trust
yeah,
between everybody in that situation. So
yeah,
it's really important. The one thing that worries me a
100%.
little bit about the community approach is possibly that you need to have quite strict boundaries with the learners because you're not a counselor and you can end up in that
Oh yeah,
position
no,
with them.
100%. Yeah, yeah. It's
What do you think
important
of
to kind of be transparent about that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But like I said, you can't have good communication without a safe environment first.
absolutely.
And I think that's what really the method is trying to focus on. And so long as, everything else is transparent and, students, learners, and the teacher are clear about their roles and responsibilities, I think it's a wonderful way of looking at learning. So yeah,
Okay,
that's about it.
absolutely.
It is one of
That's a
our
wrap.
choices.
Okay, good job. Okay, so that is our top five from each of us. And if you want to know more about any of these methods, of course, you can find them on our channel, ELT with Mickey and Ida. Please like this video, subscribe if you haven't done so, and share this content around. We'll see you very soon in our next episode. See you later.
See you later.